Welcome to the Hope Natural Health Podcast. I'm Dr. Erin Ellis, your host. On this show, we discuss all things health, hormones, and happiness with a little side of this thing called life. Julia Blackwell is a fascia release practitioner, educator, and creator of the Fascia Remedy. After living with severe nerve damage for 23 years and finding no relief through traditional treatments, Julia discovered fascia release and transformed her life. She's since dedicated herself to teaching others how to release fascia, alleviate pain, and restore movement through bodywork and foam rolling. I'm really excited for this conversation today. So welcome to the show, Julia.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on. Good to be here.
Great. Well, let's dive a little bit more into how you got into this. Tell us a little bit about your injury and how you started this.
Yeah, it's literally been a lifelong journey for me. So I was almost a 10-pound baby, which rarely goes well. And in the process of being born, I got stuck. So in the effort to pull me out, the doctor ended up stretching and tearing most of the nerves in my right shoulder. So while I did have a nerve regraft surgery at about 4 months old, which helped bring my arm back online, so to speak, I was still left with very limited mobility, limited strength, and feeling incessantly uncomfortable in that area of my body. And what, at least in the 80s, what they did is they gave me that surgery and said, wish you the best of luck. And I went on my way with very little options. I did do what I call the typical runaround that is possible in the Western medicine system, which is I'd go to a few appointments here and there. I went to occupational therapy. I did some more traditional things like massage and chiropractic. Really, I tried anything that I could to help, but nothing seemed to make any type of a lasting impact for me. So things might feel better for a day or a couple of hours, but then it felt like just starting all over again. And that was really most of my life growing up. So I was very curious about anatomy. I actually went to school for exercise physiology because when you have something that affects your life so profoundly, it can become a bit of an obsession. So I've always been very interested in anatomy and physiology. And while I was always open to trying new things, various tools and gadgets, and laid on what must be 100 tables for treatment from experts, I really deep down didn't believe that anything could be done for me. I assumed that this nerve damage and this limitation that I was feeling was going to be forever. And it wasn't until 2011 I moved out to Boulder, Colorado. By some beautiful, fateful chance, I met a lady who did a version of fascia release that was really unique. And truly, I'd never even really knew what fascia was. They mention it as connective tissue in college, but I was so surprised that I had never really understood or heard much about this thing. And it took me by complete surprise and completely changed my life. So I saw more improvement in the feel and function of my arm in about 3 months of doing this fascia-focused work than I had in a literal entire lifetime before that. So it was so exciting. I became obsessed with fascia. Truth be told, I'm still obsessed with fascia, but it was so cool to see how much improvement could be made with something that was supposed to be irrevocable. I was told it was impossible really to make any progress. If anything, it was going to get worse. So now I'm seeing real improvement. How could this help all of those other people out there that have pain and limitation and feel like they're living in this tiny closed off box because they've been told as well that there's nothing really they can do for their condition. So I opened my practice in 2013 and have been working with people to help them understand and, work with their fascia ever since.
Oh, I love that. What a great story. What is fascia? Let's talk about that first before we dive into some other things about it. So what is it and why is it so important for our movement and overall health?
So fascia is the biological fabric that holds everything in our body together. One of my favorite analogies to use is, think of it like plastic wrap. It wraps around every single muscle fibril, every muscle fiber, every muscle group, tendon, ligament, bone, organ, nerve. It's what weaves through us at a cellular level to create our shape, our structure, and our texture. So at its basic, with a basic analogy, it's like a plastic wrap suit that is a three-dimensional one that you wear on the inside. And while it is important for our posture and our mobility to have healthy fascia, fascia plays a lot of different roles in our body. It's actually what allows our muscles and joints to glide. It's what helps us absorb shock, which helps our resiliency. It also helps our ability to prevent ourselves from getting injured at times. If every time your fascia changed when you banged your elbow against the wall, we'd be in trouble, right? Helps us distribute that force and shock. It also is what surrounds our lymphatic system. So our ability to detox and have a positive and healthy immune system is influenced by fascia. Fascia is also a irrigation system. It's what brings water to every tissue and cell in our body, and also gives us a lot of our proprioception and our ability to understand where our body is in space. So really, the more we learn about fascia, the more mysterious it gets, because so many scientists are like, wow, it's playing so many different roles in the body. So that was a long tangent, but fascia is actually what is going to allow all of our other systems to function well. Essentially, because it wraps around everything, it's going to influence the function and position of everything. So how well your joints are moving, how well your muscles are gliding, how high you can jump, how fast you can run, how fast you recover, that is all influenced truly by our fascial system.
So what happens to fascia that will cause the chronic pain and injuries?
Great question. So the biggest thing I would say is underuse. So many of us are not moving the way our bodies were intended to move, which is in a very dynamic, full range of motion way. You and I are both sitting here on a podcast right now. We're all sitting more than we need to, myself included. That's the biggest one. When we don't move all the areas of our body, fascia is going to start to stick to itself and adhere to itself and become more dehydrated. Because if we're not moving our body, water's not getting to those areas, right? Overuse can play a role as well. I usually lump that into something I call repetitive movements. So if you're a CrossFitter and you're doing 300 squats a week, if you're a tennis player or a golfer that's swinging something over and over in the same way, that also can start to mess with our fascia. It's essentially tightening in a way that's very efficient for this thing we do over and over again, but our body requires such full range to do many things that it can cause problems when we do the same things over and over again. Stress and trauma are also big influencers of how healthy our fascia is. One of the roles, I'm kind of going back to the role section, it's very protective. Our fascia wants to protect us from being injured. So oftentimes, the body can't tell the difference between what is a real physical threat and what's an intrinsic threat, such as feeling stressed all the time or suffering from PTSD, maybe having some trauma in your life. That will absolutely affect fascia. And the last big one is inflammation. The more inflammation we have, usually the more our fascia suffers.
It's great. I mean, it's so important. Nobody really knows about it. I was going to say, you kind of touched on this a little bit, but what would be some signs that like someone's fascia is restricted or unhealthy besides pain? I'm assuming that's like, but how can we distinguish between it being like a muscle versus the fascia? I guess is maybe my question.
There's really no way for fascia to not be involved.
Got it.
And most of the time, here's another analogy. You can think of your fascia like a vacuum seal bag. So if over time you're doing the same things over and over, or perhaps you've been more sedentary since COVID, like so many of us.
Mm-hmm.
Like the air is slowly getting sucked out of a plastic bag, and anything that's in the bag, which includes muscles, nerves, joints, everything's getting the air sucked out of it. So
Mm-hmm.
while it may seem like it's just a muscle problem or just a joint problem or just a disc problem, it's actually a fascia problem. If we don't get the air back in the bag, it's going to be really challenging to focus on these single, more pinpointed symptomatic things. But to answer your question, yeah, pain is absolutely a huge indicator of a fascia problem. And that could be acute pain, as in you lean down to tie your shoe and your back got thrown out, or it could be chronic pain, something you've experienced for 10, 20, 30 years. That's definitely a sign that fascia is not doing very well. If you have poor mobility or flexibility, that's a good sign. If you get injured easily, if you wake up feeling stiff every single morning, if you have a lot of density or heavy feelings in your body, or if you notice you have poor posture, are your shoulders really rounded forward? Is your head coming forward? Those are all things you could possibly see in the mirror that will show you that fascia needs a little bit of work.
So besides things that you mentioned, like movement, hydration, all of that, how can we take care of our fascia?
So the most important thing that I've discovered, because fascia is becoming more and more of a buzzword now, and like I was saying earlier, it's hard not to be interacting with fascia in some way because it's
Mm-hmm.
everywhere. It's the most abundant tissue that we have.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't change easily. So we need to come at fascia in a specific way, or at least in a way that's going to get the fastest, most lasting result that you're looking for. And that includes two things. So the first is the how do we address fascia? And the how is we need to both compress fascia and actively move our body at the same time. So that combination is very essential to engage the nervous system and all of those communicative properties of our fascial system to let our body know that actually we do have access to this range of motion. We can move in certain ways again. And there's a safety element built in when we're moving our body ourselves. So whether we want to believe it or not, when we're on a table and someone is forcing change to our body, it's a 50-50 shot whether or not your body's going to integrate that. If for any reason your nervous system feels unsafe, it may reject that change. It may create inflammation, which I already touched on is actually not very helpful for fascia. So being able to compress up to a level of a 6, maybe a 7 out of 10 at max, and of course lower, and move the body at the same time, that's the most important way to get fascia to change in that area and stay changed for a more lasting amount of time. And then second, yes, go ahead.
No, you're not done. Go.
Oh, it's like the second one, which is also equally important when it comes to pain specifically, is we need to make sure we're addressing the where in the body for fascia release. So most of us assume wherever we feel a symptom or wherever we feel pain is the problem, but that rarely ever happens. Our fascia is a bit like a pulley system. So everything's connected in that plastic wrap suit. But if one area of it shrinks down and becomes like a crumpled up ball of plastic wrap, it's going to shift and pull just about everything else in the body to try to balance and reorient itself. So most times where that crumpled up ball of plastic wrap is not where you're feeling pain. Where we feel pain is often what's being overstretched or overworked. And so that's the two-pronged system of addressing fascia well, is doing the right combination of compression and movement, and then making sure, especially with pain, that you're in the right area. That's the root cause of your pain instead of chasing the symptom.
Got it. So with the number one, is that using foam rolling? All right.
Well, if you're doing it on your own, yes. However, I don't recommend that you actually roll on your roller. It depends on what your intention is, right? Mm-hmm. If you're wanting to warm up for your workout, rolling on a roller is really effective for creating a bit of heat in your muscles and helping them warm up. However, we're not going to be affecting deeper layers of fascia, which tend to be more problematic if you're feeling a lot of pain, stiffness, or, having mobility problems, if that makes sense.
Yep. Yeah. So with that, I mean, a lot of people do foam rolling. How can it be used to release fascia effectively?
Yes. So use your foam roller as a tool for compression instead of as a thing that you're rolling up and down aimlessly on. So let's take the quads, for example. We've likely all got down in that plank position with the foam roller on our thighs and used our arms a little bit to just pull us up and down. We're going with the grain of the muscle and a lot of the fascial fibers as well. But we really need that active movement where we're cross fibering and shearing those fascial fibers against each other for real hydration to happen in the body, as well as that repatterning. So instead of rolling up and down the length of your quads, pause on one spot that feels tight or tender, a little sore. That's usually a good sign that that spot needs help, because healthy fascia doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
Stay on that one spot and then slowly bend at the knees and bring your heels back towards your glutes. So it's like a little hamstring curl. You can do a couple of those nice and slow. I'll also usually pause at that 90-degree angle with my knees and rock my heels side to side. And so now we're going perpendicular to the way that those quad muscle fibers run. So now we're getting shearing, we're getting cross fibering, and we're getting that active movement. And I've just found with, hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands at this point, of people I've worked with, that is the key to feeling like you're actually making progress with some of your foam rolling. And you'll be able to do it for less time. If I'm very slowly, intentionally, and breathing my way through an active movement, I can release my quads in a couple of minutes instead of spending 10, 15 minutes just rolling and rolling up and down the IT band. It's not going to get you to the feeling that you want to feel.
Okay. So rolling might not necessarily be the best. So what are some other big mistakes people make when they use these tools like foam rolling?
Yeah, to be fair, I wouldn't necessarily qualify them as mistakes. The intention of a foam roller was to roll on it.
Right.
It's just the more we understand about how to create the best change, I just find, using things like massage balls or lacrosse balls, softballs, foam rollers, it's just trying to use that to achieve the compression you're looking for and then move. So, while you're at the gym, that would be my biggest tip is like, hey, whatever spot feels sore, stop and pause on that spot and see what kind of movement you can create nearby while staying on that same spot. So if I have a lacrosse ball in my pec, up in that little pocket underneath your shoulder, and instead of moving my body, attempting to roll up and down or across on the pec, I want to just lean into it, see if I can keep the same spot compressed and reach my arm over my head. Do a little bit of internal, external rotation. I'm doing this in video. If you're listening to this, just, flipping your palm up, down, reaching above your head, any movement that can be achieved nearby joints and muscles is going to be so much more helpful for you in the long term.
Yeah. No, that's great advice. So you have an approach called the Fascia Remedy. So how is this different from other bodywork methods?
Yeah, it's a large part of it is what I just said. So many typical treatments out there are very passive. You lay there, someone else does something to you, or it's something like you're throwing a heat pack or an ice pack, even a electrical stem, like a TENS unit on an area. And then you go on to watching TV, you're checked out, you're just letting something happen to your body. That's all in the category of passive treatments. And passive treatments absolutely can work. The point that I've experienced so much is we all want to feel better as fast as possible, right? So when we implement that active movement part of it, that's when we start seeing a lot more quick change happen. So I'm all about the how of releasing fascia and also the where. So I've learned over the years, through things like Thomas Myers anatomy trains, and the work of Ida Rolf and all of these incredible body workers in the past is you can start to predict what's tight based on where someone is feeling pain. And so it normally is fun and also a bit surprising for the person that you're working on, where let's say low back pain, everybody's trying to foam roll their low back or get chiropractic on their back or get massages on their back. But in reality, the number one cause of back pain is restriction in the quads and in the hip flexors, possibly the adductors. So it's knowing the where that's going to alleviate pain quickly that makes this methodology a bit different than the average. We do a lot of symptom chasing in this world, in this country.
Yeah, for sure.
It's finding the root cause and taking that extra time to see what's truly creating this issue for you. That's so important.
Yeah. This wasn't in our notes, but I'm just going to wing it here because I'm sure you could think of someone or someone off the top of your head. But give us a case study about someone that came to you for X and, something cool about how, similar to like your own story.
Wow. I feel very lucky. I have a lot of those stories.
Good.
I tend to be the person people find last because this is so obscure. And my practice, although it's 12 years old at this point, most people hear about me through word of mouth. It's not necessarily a widely looked for thing just yet. So I normally see people after they've been to the doctor, they've been to PT, they've been to chiropractic and done all of the methods and nothing has helped. And talking to them, usually it's that the person is in the wrong spot, number one. But also that passive element can be true. But I have had many people come in with plantar fasciitis is a great example. They're rolling the frozen water bottle on their foot. They go to the podiatrist. They have orthotics. They have been told maybe to stretch their calf, and that's about it. They really assume that it's a foot problem, and rarely is plantar fasciitis a true foot problem. What's happening in the plantar fascia is it's not getting any hydration because of either one of two things. Number one, there's too much tension throughout the entire posterior fascial chain. So that means the calf, the hamstring, and the glute. Or just as commonly, there is a shift or a rotation happening in the hips or in the pelvis. So whenever we have a shift happening in the pelvis, it's going to change functionally the length of one leg, or it's going to impact the wear and tear pattern we are generally having with our lower body. So if your right hip is elevated and it has to go a little bit lower down to strike the ground, it's going to impact how that foot feels. If one foot is shorter functionally and the ankle gets really tight and it's not moving very well, that's also going to start to affect things. So once we release the posterior chain and rebalance the hips with a little bit of fascia release, that pain goes away and we never even touch the foot. So I've had quite a few stories like that where it's so validating for these people that are like, I've done everything I'm supposed to do. Why is this thing hurting? People think I'm making it up at this point, or it's psychosomatic. And that's so hard. That's such a hard place to be. I've certainly been there myself. And it's like, no, fascia doesn't show up on an MRI. Most people don't understand the pulley system thing that is happening. We don't have enough time to look at someone's whole structure. We don't have 10 years to talk about like insurance and how they influence the treatment of things. It gets very complicated. But those are the most exciting stories, are the people that come in and they're like, I've tried everything. And I about some weird wizardry that you're doing in here. And it's like, it's not wizardry, it's just science. But
right, it's kind of like you. I mean, your story, you tried everything, and then divine intervention, you met someone that does what you do now, and you're like, whoa, this is probably it.
Yeah, it's so amazing because, that's not the last time I've had pain in my life. I'm an active person. I've hiked all of the tallest peaks in Colorado. I'm out doing things, and occasionally I'll get some knee pain or some neck pain, but the power in understanding fascia a little bit more deeply is that pain doesn't scare me anymore. As soon as I feel it, I understand that that's a signal that something is tight and needs to be released. I feel very confident that I can address it myself with literally a $10 foam roller and be able to get rid of my pain.
Yeah.
And that's one of the best compliments I get from this work is when someone I haven't seen for months and months sends me an email and they're like, hey, I've been feeling great. That knee pain we were working on started to come back. But then I just went and did those 2 foam roller exercises you told me to do, and now it's gone. This is so cool. That's my favorite compliment. I'm like, see, now you know what to do for these things, because pain's a part of life, right? It'd be insane for us to expect that from this day forward, we will never experience any pain.
Yeah.
And so I love being able to at least teach people that it's not the end of the world. It's very solvable. Our body isn't trying to hurt us. It's trying to help us with these signals. And with just a little bit of exploration and doing things in the right areas, it can be a very easy fix.
Yeah. Love that. Gosh, obviously fascia is important. I wonder if this is like the first time, I mean, I know about it, but probably new to a lot of people. So I really appreciate your time and expertise on this. We'll wrap it up with one question I ask all my guests. What would be your best or favorite health tip that you can share with the audience?
My best health tip would be to play more. Our body's meant to move in all kinds of different directions. And I see so many of us getting caught up in one sport or one workout that we really like. And our body isn't necessarily meant to just do bicep curls and shoulder press. Our body's meant to be moving and climbing and jumping and dynamically twisting. And so if you incorporate any type of play, you're more likely to move your body in different directions and in different ways than you do when you're just doing your typical routine. So it's also good for your mental health. The more you can run around and take your dogs and, I don't know, stop at a playground that you're walking by and do a couple of monkey bar moves. I think that's my best tip for getting fascia in a better place. It needs hydration, and it's only going to get that if you're not doing fascia release specifically. You're really only going to get it with movement.
Oh, I love that. Great reminder. So you have a free 3-day video series called Unlock Your Hips that will show how the audience can release the fascia with foam rolling and we'll make sure we have that linked in the show notes and all of your social media and your website. Is there anything else that you wanted to add, Julia?
No, I just appreciate the opportunity to talk about this. I'm sure you can hear it in my voice. I love talking about fascia and being able to explain or really help people discover it's not as complicated as you think. I think we all want to believe we're some kind of medical unicorn, especially if we've heard a few times that, the doctor's like, I don't really know what this is, or are you sure you're making this up or not making this up? So just being able to share that and give people the hope that there absolutely can be a resolution to something they're experiencing. I hope that they can hear it.
Oh, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for doing what you do. I appreciate it. And I'm sure everyone that you have touched does as well. So thank you for sharing everything. And that's a wrap, everyone. We'll see you again next week. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure to like, share, subscribe, and leave a comment below. And if you haven't done so, please be sure to give us a rating on your favorite podcast platform. Join us weekly as we inspire you to be your best version. For more, follow me on Instagram at dr.erinellis. Until next week, you got this.